The sun was slipping gently through the glass windows of the grand mansion, spilling golden light across marble floors that had never known dirt or hurried footsteps. Inside, the air was perfectly still, the silence broken only by the faint ticking of a clock in the hallway. Clara adjusted the stack of documents on her desk, her eyes heavy from reading contracts that seemed to stretch endlessly. Numbers and signatures filled her world, and yet, at that moment, something tugged at her attention like a whisper she couldn't ignore. She rose and stepped into the long corridor that overlooked the sprawling garden. Beyond the glass walls, the world looked alive, painted with emerald grass, white roses, and the flutter of sparrows rising into the warm afternoon sky. Then she saw at the sight that made her heart stumble. Her daughter, Emma, only 7 years old, in a pale yellow dress, her little feet barely touching the ground as she dashed across the lawn. The ribbon in her hair bounced with each hurried step, her laughter carrying across the distance like music. Clara's lips curved faintly at the sight, but her smile vanished as quickly as it came. For Emma was not running toward her. At the far end of the garden, near the wooden fence, stood the gardener. His shirt was worn, his hands busy smoothing the soil around young plants. But his posture was proud, steady, as if the earth itself respected his touch. He lifted his head at the sound of small feet thundering toward him. Before he could rise, Emma leapt into his arms, her tiny hands wrapping around his neck, her face glowing with joy. Clara froze. The moment looked natural, like a reunion between two souls who had always belonged together. The man stiffened, startled, but then slowly, hesitantly, his arms circled around the child, holding her as though she was something fragile and precious. Clara's chest tightened. This was no ordinary hug. It wasn't the polite embrace of a worker indulging a child's playfulness. It was something deeper, unspoken, and it unsettled her. She stepped forward, her heels echoing against the polished floor, her voice sharp yet shaking beneath the surface. Emma, the child pulled back slightly. Startled by the tone, she looked toward her mother with wide eyes, then back at the gardener, her arms still loosely draped around him. "Mom, he's really nice," she said, her voice innocent, filled with warmth. "Come inside," Clara instructed, her words firm, though her gaze did not leave the man. Now, Emma reluctantly obeyed, letting go and running toward the house. But the image of her little girl's face, so bright, so full of love, clung stubbornly to Clara's mind for a heartbeat longer. Her eyes locked with his. The gardener's expression was unreadable, a mixture of hesitation and something else, something familiar, though she could not name it. It was as though an invisible thread had pulled tight between them, straining after years of silence. Then, without a word, he bent back to his work, leaving Clara trembling in the doorway, her heart louder than the ticking clock inside. That night, Clara sat at the long dining table, the crystal chandelier scattering light across untouched plates of food. Emma ate happily, chattering about her day, her words spilling like a bubbling stream. But Clara's thoughts were not at the table. Again and again, she saw the moment replay: the gardener's eyes, Emma's arms, the unspoken bond that seemed to exist without reason. "Why did you run to him?" Clara asked suddenly, cutting into her daughter's chatter. Emma blinked, surprised by the question. "Because he makes me feel safe, like when you hug me before bed." The fork in Clara's hand slipped slightly, tapping against the porcelain plate. Her breath caught. A stranger's arms compared to hers. How could her daughter feel that? How could she sense something so deep, so quickly? Later, when Emma was asleep, Clara stood by the window of her bedroom. Below, in the moonlit garden, she could see him. The gardener worked even at night, carefully closing the shed, brushing dust from his palms. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost weary. She wondered about his story, why he worked here, why Emma had been drawn to him in a way that felt both sudden and ancient. Clara's hand lingered on the curtain. She should feel nothing. He was just a man, employed to care for the grounds. But there was something unsettling in the way her daughter's heart had recognized him, something that made the walls she had built inside herself begin to tremble. And as she turned away from the window, trying to quiet her restless thoughts, she couldn't escape the haunting truth that echoed in the silence. That hug had awakened A part of the past she had sworn would never resurface, that it was only the beginning. The morning began with the usual stillness of the mansion, yet Clara felt restless, her sleep having been broken by fragmented dreams. Each time she drifted off, she saw Emma running into the gardener's arms, as if the scene had burned itself into her memory. By sunrise, she gave up on sleep altogether. She moved through the house, the soft click of her heels echoing faintly against marble floors, her hands clutching a cup of untouched coffee from the kitchen window. She saw him again. Daniel the gardener, whose presence unsettled her more than she cared to admit, was already outside. The sky was still tinted with dawn, a mist hanging low across the lawn. And yet he worked tirelessly, his hands smoothing soil, his movements calm and precise, as though the earth itself obeyed him. Clara wondered what kind of man woke this early to tend to someone else's land with such devotion. Emma entered the kitchen with a burst of energy, her hair still tangled from sleep, her face glowing with excitement. "Mom, can I go outside?" she asked, her voice carrying that innocent determination Clara found hard to resist. "Not now," Clara replied quickly, almost too quickly. "You have breakfast first." But Emma's eyes darted to the window, where Daniel worked silently, unaware of being watched. There was a sparkle in her daughter's gaze, the kind of wonder children reserve for heroes. Clara felt her stomach knot. After breakfast, Clara tried to bury herself in work at her study, but her mind betrayed her. Her pen hovered over documents she could not read. She was a woman who had always prided herself on control of her career, her household, her emotions. Yet one unexpected embrace had left her shaken, uncertain of what was real and what was imagination. By mid-morning, Emma slipped from her mother's sight. Clara found her outside, crouched near the flower beds, chatting away as Daniel patiently listened. He wasn't laughing, nor was he indulgent in the way adults usually humor children. He listened as if every word Emma spoke mattered. Clara lingered at the doorway, unseen, and for a moment, she felt something unfamiliar, almost envy. "Emma," she called, stepping into the garden. The child turned, smiling brightly. "Mom, Daniel said he knows how to make the roses grow faster. Isn't that amazing?" Clara's eyes shifted to him, her voice steady but distant. "Daniel, your work is in the far yard today, is it not?" He straightened, wiping his hands against his jeans. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be moving there now." His tone was respectful, his expression unreadable, but Clara felt as if his silence carried more weight than his words. For the rest of the day, Clara's thoughts circled endlessly. Why did Emma cling to him with such affection? Why did she, Clara, feel something stir when his eyes met hers, even for a second? She told herself it was nonsense, nothing more than coincidence. And yet, deep within, she knew she was lying to herself. That evening, Clara hosted a dinner with a few business associates. The house was filled with the sounds of polite conversation, silver cutlery against fine china, the kind of gathering she had grown used to. But as her guests complimented the beauty of the estate, she couldn't help glancing toward the garden. Through the glass doors, she caught a glimpse of him there, walking away with his tools slung over his shoulder. Her heart skipped in a way that startled her. She quickly returned her focus to her guests, masking her distraction with practiced poise. Yet the thought lingered, what did her daughter see in him that she couldn't allow herself to see? Later that night, after everyone had left and Emma was fast asleep, Clara stepped outside into the quiet garden. The moonlight bathed the grounds in silver, and the fragrance of roses filled the air. She walked slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the damp grass, until she reached the wooden fence where Emma had first hugged him. She touched the fence absent-mindedly, her fingers tracing the rough edges of the wood. It was then that she heard a faint sound, the rhythmic thud of a hammer from the shed nearby. She turned and saw Daniel, still working even at this late hour. He hadn't noticed her. His concentration was unwavering, his strong hands steady, his movements patient, as though time itself belonged to him. Clara stood watching longer than she intended. Something about the sight pulled her into memories she had long buried. A summer years ago, when she was young and full of dreams, when laughter had come easily and love had seemed simple. She shook her head quickly, forcing herself back to the present. This was foolish. She was not that young woman anymore. She was a mother, a businesswoman, someone who had built her life on discipline and choices. And yet, as she turned to leave, Daniel looked up suddenly, his eyes meeting hers across the distance. It was only a second, perhaps less, but it was enough. The world seemed to still, the air thick with unspoken recognition. Clara's chest tightened as she quickly turned away, retreating back into the safety of her mansion's walls. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind restless. Why did it feel as though life was pushing her towards something she wasn't ready to face? Why did it feel as though Emma's innocent hug had been the beginning of a story Clara had tried to end long ago? The truth lingered at the edge of her thoughts, refusing to be silenced. And though she tried to push it away, she knew that soon, very soon, she would no longer be able to hide from it. The following morning, Clara woke to the sound of Emma's laughter, echoing from the garden. The sound was bright, clear, and unshaken. By the heavy walls of the mansion, Clara slipped out of bed, pulled the curtains aside, and froze. Her daughter was twirling barefoot in the grass, a crown of daisies on her head, while Daniel sat on the ground beside her, weaving flowers with those strong, calloused hands that seemed oddly gentle when handling fragile things. Emma's face glowed as she looked at him, and when she placed the crooked crown on his head, he smiled, just a small, fleeting curve of his lips, but genuine. Clara felt her chest tighten in a way she hadn't expected. She dressed quickly and descended to the garden, her heels sinking into the soft earth. Emma ran to her, tugging on her hand. "Mom, look. Daniel made me a flower crown. Isn't it pretty?" Clara's eyes flicked toward him. "You should be tending to the yard," she said, her voice cool though her pulse beat faster. Daniel rose slowly, brushing grass from his jeans. "Yes, ma'am. I was only keeping her entertained until you came." His tone was respectful, his gaze steady, but unreadable. Clara pulled Emma close, forcing a smile. "You shouldn't bother him. He has work to do." Emma pouted, but obeyed, skipping back toward the house. Daniel gave a brief nod and returned to his tools. Clara lingered a moment longer, torn between annoyance and something else she dared not name, then followed her daughter inside. All morning, Clara wrestled with her thoughts. She could not shake the memory of Daniel's faint smile, the way Emma's laughter grew louder around him. It was dangerous, she told herself. Bonds like that could confuse a child, blur lines that were meant to stay sharp. But deep down, she feared the truth that the connection between them was not accidental. By afternoon, Clara had to leave for a meeting in the city. As her car pulled away from the estate, she caught sight of Emma standing near the window, her small hand pressed to the glass. Behind her, she thought she glimpsed Daniel's silhouette in the garden, watching, though she couldn't be sure. The meeting was long, but Clara's mind remained elsewhere. She had always been admired for her composure in the boardroom, yet today, she faltered. When a colleague asked her a question, she hesitated before answering. Her thoughts tangled with images of Emma running freely into arms that were not hers. On the drive back, she sat in silence, the city lights fading behind her, replaced by the endless stretch of countryside. With every mile, the weight in her chest grew heavier. When she arrived home, the mansion was unusually quiet. She found Emma in the library, curled up with a storybook. "Did you have fun today?" Clara asked, her tone casual. Emma nodded eagerly. "Daniel told me about the stars. He said if you lie on the grass at night, you can see them better than through any window. Can we do that, Mom, please?" Clara's throat tightened. "Maybe another time," she replied softly. But Emma's words stayed with her. Daniel wasn't only planting flowers. He was planting ideas in her daughter's heart, and Emma was listening. Later that night, Clara stepped out into the garden alone. The sky was clear, the stars scattered. Like silver dust across the darkness, she lay back on the grass, almost against her will, staring upward. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a pause from the endless rush of business, responsibility, and appearances. The air was cool against her skin, and for a moment, she understood why Emma had been enchanted. A voice startled her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Clara sat up quickly. Daniel stood a few feet away, his hands resting at his sides, his gaze turned skyward. You shouldn't sneak up on people," she said, her tone sharper than intended. "I didn't mean to," he replied calmly. "I was just finishing in the shed. I didn't expect to see you here." Clara rose, brushing grass from her dress. "Emma mentioned you told her stories about the stars. I'd appreciate it if you didn't fill her head with nonsense." His eyes flickered with something she couldn't read. "It isn't nonsense. Children should see the world as bigger than walls and windows. Don't you think so?" She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. The words refused to come. Trapped behind the sudden rush of memories nights long ago, laughter under open skies, promises whispered when the world seemed simple. She blinked them away quickly, her voice firm. "Your job is the garden, nothing more. Remember that." Daniel inclined his head slightly, though his gaze lingered on her longer than it should have. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing alone in the silence. When she returned inside, she found Emma asleep, clutching the daisy crown beside her pillow. Clara's chest ached as she gently removed it and placed it on the nightstand. Watching her daughter's peaceful face, she whispered, "You don't understand what you're inviting into your heart." But the truth was, Clara herself didn't fully understand what she was keeping out of hers. That night, sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emma's arms wrapped around Daniel, saw his patient smile, heard his calm voice. Under the stars, it unsettled her more deeply than she wanted to admit. Something long buried was stirring again, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the past came knocking louder than she could ignore. And though she tried to steady her heart, she couldn't escape the uneasy truth Emma's bond with Daniel was growing stronger every day, and Clara was powerless to stop it. The rain came suddenly the next morning, tapping against the windows like hurried fingers. Clara stood by the glass wall of her study, watching droplets streak down as if the sky itself had decided to share her unrest. The estate looked different under gray clouds, softer, quieter, as though it carried secrets only the storm could keep. She tried to lose herself in her paperwork, but her focus wavered. The image of Emma curled up with her daisy crown still haunted her, and Daniel lingered in the corner of her thoughts. No matter how fiercely she tried to push him away, Emma, restless from being kept indoors, tugged on her mother's hand. "Can I go play outside?" "Please, Mom, I'll wear my boots." Clara shook her head gently. "It's muddy. You'll catch a cold." But Emma's bright eyes dimmed, and the disappointment on her daughter's face unsettled Clara more than she wanted to admit. Later, when the rain slowed to a drizzle, Clara relented. She let Emma put on her little red boots and watched as she bounded into the garden, splashing through puddles with infectious joy. Clara followed more slowly, umbrella in hand, unwilling to admit she was keeping a close eye on both Emma and on the man she knew she would find there. Sure enough, Daniel was repairing a broken trellis by the roses, his shirt damp from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead. He worked steadily, unaffected by the weather, each strike of his hammer precise. Emma spotted him immediately. "Daniel," she called, running toward him. He glanced up, his expression softening, and crouched to meet her. "Careful with the puddles," he said, smiling faintly as Emma showed him the wildflower she had plucked. Clara tightened her grip on the umbrella. There it was again, that quiet, unexplainable understanding between them, a simple exchange. Yet it felt like something deeper, something dangerous to the fragile world Clara had built. She stepped closer, her voice firm. "Emma, don't trouble him while he's working." Emma looked up, unbothered. "I'm not troubling him, Mom. He doesn't mind." Daniel straightened, his eyes meeting Clara's. For a fleeting second, something unspoken passed between them, as if her words reached him differently than she intended. Clara's breath caught, and she quickly turned away, leading Emma back toward the house. That evening, the storm worsened. Thunder rolled across the hills, and lightning cast shadows through the mansion's halls. Emma clung to her blanket, uneasy. Clara sat by her bed, stroking her hair. "It's only a storm," she soothed. "Nothing to fear," Emma whispered. "Daniel said storms make the earth stronger. He said the flowers grow better after the rain." Clara stilled, her hand pausing mid-motion. The gardener's words had found a home in her daughter's heart, offering comfort in a way Clara hadn't managed herself. She tucked the blanket tighter around Emma, forcing a smile. "Then you'll see how strong the garden is tomorrow," she murmured. But inside, her heart twisted. Sleep eluded Clara once more, restless. She wandered through the dim corridors until she found herself drawn to the back porch. The storm was still raging, but there he was, Daniel, securing the shed against the wind, his body outlined by each flash of lightning. Clara stepped out despite the rain, her umbrella almost useless against the gusts. "You shouldn't be out here," she called, raising her voice above the storm. He turned, surprised to see her. "Neither should you." His tone was calm, almost gentle, though the rain beat mercilessly against them both. "You work as if the world depends on it," she said, her voice sharper than intended, "even in weather like this." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers, as though weighing truths left unspoken. Finally, he replied, "Some things are worth protecting, no matter the storm." The words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. For a moment, she forgot the rain, forgot the thunder. All she could hear was the weight behind his voice, the steadiness in his gaze. She opened her mouth to respond, but found no words. They stood in silence until the wind howled again, pulling her back to reality. Clara turned quickly, retreating inside before the storm outside became the storm within her. She pressed her back against the closed door, her breath trembling. The following day dawned clear and bright, the earth washed clean by the rain. The roses gleamed, droplets clinging to their petals like diamonds. Emma ran barefoot across the damp grass, her laughter echoing through the air. Clara followed at a distance, her eyes drawn inevitably to Daniel, who was already back at work. As if the storm had left no trace on him, she watched as Emma darted toward him, carrying a small sketchbook she had been filling with childish drawings. Daniel crouched beside her, studying the crooked lines with surprising patience. He pointed at one, said something that made Emma beam, and then helped her add a few marks of his own. It was a small moment, simple and ordinary, yet Clara felt her chest tighten once again. Why was her daughter so drawn to him? Why did his presence, so quiet and steady, disturb the carefully ordered world Clara had built? She told herself it was nothing more than coincidence, a child's whim. But deep down, she knew it was more, much more. That evening, while Emma slept peacefully, Clara stood before the old family portrait in the hallway. She traced her fingers over the frame, remembering the years when her life had been simpler, when she had believed love could overcome anything. Memories pressed against her like waves, unrelenting, and in those quiet hours of the night, Clara finally admitted to herself what she had been trying so hard to deny. The storm Emma had unleashed with that innocent hug was not just in her heart. It was in her past, in her choices, in the secrets she had buried. And now, with every passing day, it was rising to the surface, threatening to change everything. The days after the storm carried a strange calm, but Clara felt anything but calm. Inside, the mansion looked the same, polished and perfect, its walls echoing with the same silence as always, yet her heart was unsettled. Each time she passed the window, she caught herself looking into the garden, searching for Emma's bright figure, or Daniel's steady presence. She told herself she only watched out of duty as a mother. But the truth was harder to silence. Something deeper, older, had begun to stir. One afternoon, Clara found herself in the attic, searching for documents she had stored away years ago. Dust floated in the sunlight that cut through the small window. Boxes stacked high carried labels of memories, law school papers, business contracts, childhood keepsakes. She pulled one open and froze. Inside was an old sketch, folded and frayed. At the edges, it was of a wooden chair, crooked in design, nails sticking out, her first clumsy attempt at carpentry when she had been barely 20. And she remembered who had stood beside her then, guiding her hand, laughing when she fumbled, fixing each mistake with patience. Daniel. Her breath caught. The attic suddenly felt too small, the air too heavy. She slammed the box shut, her pulse quickening. She had buried that summer so deep, convinced it was gone forever, yet here it was, spilling back into her life through her daughter's innocent arms. That evening, Emma approached her with a question that tightened every muscle in Clara's body. "Mom, Why doesn't Daniel live with his family? He never says anything when I ask. He just smiles. Clara forced her voice steady. Perhaps it's private, Emma. Not everything is for us to know. But he feels familiar, Emma said softly, tilting her head. Like I've known him forever. The words struck Clara harder than she let show. She brushed her daughter's hair gently, murmuring, "Sometimes we feel that way about kind people." But her chest ached as if Emma had unknowingly spoken a truth too close to the heart. The following day, Clara had an unexpected visitor, an old family friend, Mr. Wallace, who had known her parents for decades. He came to discuss estate matters. His eyes always sharp, his memory sharper. As they walked through the garden, his gaze landed on Daniel, who was repairing the stone pathway. Mr. Wallace's steps faltered. "That man," he said slowly. "He looks familiar." Clara's heart skipped. "He's the gardener," she replied quickly. But Wallace didn't look convinced. He squinted, as though peering through time. "Strange. He resembles a young carpenter I once saw here, many years ago. He worked with such passion. I remember, because your father disapproved of him. Thought he was too ambitious for his station." Clara's stomach twisted. She forced a laugh. "You must be mistaken. That was years ago." Wallace nodded. But Clara could tell his mind was still turning. As they walked away, Clara glanced back at Daniel. His head was bent to his work, but she felt as though he had heard every word. His silence carrying the weight of recognition. That night, Clara's sleep was filled with restless dreams. She saw herself younger, laughing under the maple trees. Daniel's hand warm in hers. She heard her father's voice, stern and unyielding, tearing them apart with words that left scars deeper than any wound. She woke with a start, her chest heaving, the echoes of the past refusing to fade. When morning came, she found Emma already outside, chasing butterflies across the wet grass. Daniel stood nearby, quietly watching to make sure she didn't fall. The sight pulled Clara's heart into directions, one toward fear, the other toward something dangerously close to longing. She stepped outside, her voice calm but clipped. "Emma, breakfast is ready. Come inside." Emma groaned but obeyed, skipping toward the house. Clara lingered, her eyes on Daniel. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with unasked questions. Finally, Clara said quietly, "Why did you come back here?" Daniel looked at her then, his eyes steady, carrying years of silence. "Work brought me here." Nothing more. She wanted to believe him, but something in his tone told her otherwise. She turned quickly, unwilling to let him see the tremor in her hands, and walked back into the mansion. But the question lingered long after she closed the door. Why here? Why now, out of all the places in the world? Why had he appeared in her garden, in her daughter's life? That evening, Emma brought another drawing to Clara's study. It was of three figures, Emma in the middle, Clara on one side, and Daniel on the other. The lines were crooked, the colors uneven, but the message pierced through Clara's chest. "See, Mom," Emma said proudly. "It's us, a family." Clara's throat tightened. She stroked her daughter's cheek, forcing a smile. But when Emma left the room, tears welled in her eyes. She pressed the drawing to her chest, whispering to the empty room, "You don't know the truth, my love, and I don't know how to protect you from it." The night stretched endlessly. Clara wandered the halls, memories pressing in on every side. She thought of the choices she had made, the lies she had told, the years that had passed in silence. And now, with Emma unknowingly weaving Daniel into the fabric of their lives, Clara felt the walls she had built beginning to crumble. The storm within her heart was louder than the one that had passed days ago, and deep inside, Clara knew the past she had buried so carefully was no longer content to remain hidden. It was only a matter of time before the truth demanded to be seen. The morning sun spilled across the estate, but Clara felt no warmth. She moved through the halls like a shadow, her mind heavy with the knowledge that the truth she had tried to bury was now pressing closer to the surface. Emma's laughter floated from the garden, pure and unguarded, and Clara's heart ached, torn between a desire to protect her daughter and the fear of what the revelation might bring. She stepped outside, catching sight of Daniel carefully tending the roses. The sunlight caught the dampness in his hair, the sharp lines of his hands, and for a moment, She was transported back to a summer long ago when life had been simpler, yet her heart had carried the weight of choices she wasn't ready to face. Emma ran toward him, carrying a small basket of freshly picked flowers, her tiny fingers brushing petals together. "Look, Daniel, I picked these for you," she exclaimed. He bent down to her level, smiling faintly, taking the basket gently. "Thank you, Emma. These will brighten the garden." Clara watched, her chest tight, as her daughter's face lit up with pride. Every gesture between them seemed effortless, natural, yet the intensity of it unnerved her. She stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. "Emma, don't forget we have breakfast soon." Emma looked back at her, torn between obligation and the bond she had formed. "Just a minute, Mom. I want to show him something." Clara's gaze flicked toward Daniel, whose eyes met hers briefly. There was a flicker of recognition, subtle but undeniable, and her pulse quickened. The air between them carried unspoken truths, memories clawing at the edges of the present. That night, Clara could no longer resist the pull of the past. She sat at her old desk, leafing through letters and faded photographs she had hidden away for years. Images of her younger self, laughing under maple trees, holding hands with Daniel. The innocence of first love captured in still frames. She traced her fingers over a photograph of him smiling at her, unaware that the photo would one day carry the weight of destiny. The memory of the day she had left him returned with a sharp sting. She had been afraid of her father, afraid of judgment, afraid of the life she might never have if she stayed. Yet she had carried Emma, and with her, the secret that had defined every choice since. Now, watching her daughter bond with Daniel, Clara realized the past could no longer remain hidden. The following afternoon, Clara confronted him in the garden, her voice low but firm. "Daniel, there's something you need to know about Emma, about us." He paused, setting down his tools. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. "Clara, I've always known there was something unspoken, something kept from me." Her breath caught. "Emma, she's your daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy with years of secrecy. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, then softened, a mixture of disbelief, relief, and an emotion Clara could not name. All this time, Clara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I was protecting her. I thought I was protecting us, but seeing how she lights up around you, I can't deny it anymore." Daniel stepped closer, his hands trembling slightly. "Clara, I never stopped caring, and now she is my heart in ways I cannot describe." Emma, who had been quietly picking flowers nearby, froze as if sensing the shift. She looked up at them, her small face full of questions she could not yet ask. Clara knelt beside her daughter, taking her hands gently. "Emma, do you know someone very special?" Emma nodded, a smile breaking across her face. "Daniel," she exclaimed. Daniel knelt as well, taking her small hands into his. "Yes, Emma, I've always wanted to know you, to be here with you." Clara watched, her heart both heavy and full, as father and daughter embraced again. The bond undeniable, pure, and unbroken by the years of separation. In that moment, all her fears, all the carefully constructed walls, fell away. She realized that love, once lost, could return stronger, weaving together lives in ways no one could anticipate. The days that followed were filled with quiet discovery, laughter, and a rebuilding of trust. Clara watched as Daniel taught Emma about the stars, about flowers, about the world beyond the mansion walls. And though the truth had been hidden for so long, it now shone brightly, illuminating the path forward. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Clara found herself standing by the garden again. Daniel joined her silently, the air between them calm, yet charged with the promise of new beginnings. She reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For staying, for understanding, for loving her." He smiled, a faint curve that carried all the years of unspoken longing. "Thank you for trusting me, for letting me in." Clara looked at Emma, who played nearby, laughing as the first fireflies of the evening danced around her. And in that moment, she understood that the past, with all its pain and choices, had led them to this exact point of family, whole at last, built not on fear or secrecy, but on love, courage, and the bonds that withstand time. The storm had passed, the rain had ended, and the light that filled the garden now mirrored the warmth in Clara's heart. She knew the journey ahead would have challenges, but the truth had set them free. And sometimes, freedom was the greatest gift one could ever receive.